Evening, everyone. As you're coming on in, we're thankful you're with us this evening. Tonight's going to be a treat. Mr. Mitchell Hora is with us this evening, young seventh generation farmer from southeastern Iowa. So we'll give folks a little more time to come in.
And we hammer on them with it. Straight
Mhm.
to it, Rick.
All right, let's go. Let's go. As I like to start these, it's giddy up, let's go. Mitchell, I am absolutely honored you're with us this evening. Thank you so much.
It's going to be a fun time. I'm sure of it.
It will
Happy to
be.
be here. Happy to be here.
Yeah, good, great. I'm going to start off like I do with everybody. Mitchell, what is on your mind right now?
Yeah. So definitely right now, thinking about scale, thinking about taking this way, way bigger than what any of us have ever thought about it before.
Mhm.
And, thinking about how do we enable regenerative ag to really flourish and scale and get a lot um, more people involved. There's a lot of money that wants to get into this space. There's a lot of farmers that are looking for opportunities. There's a lot of need in the farming community for better solutions and resources. And we just got to think about massive scale to enable all this to happen. So, been spending a lot of time thinking about that. That right now at Continuum Ag, we work directly with farmers, and we've got some pilot projects and some large, very prominent large companies that we're working with. But it's how do we take that to a bigger level? Like it's still all so small. It's not really getting to the
Right.
right stage of impact. And I just think it's a chicken and the egg thing. That's what it boils down to. So I'm just trying to figure out how do we break that, because I think trying to get one end or the other, to figure this out is just not working. So we just have to kind of force it through and think about this stuff at a lot bigger level than what any of us have really thought about it before. So that's what I've been thinking about here recently.
Yeah. So let's stay right there for just a minute. This is what always intrigues me, and Mitchell, you're probably of the people I know, you're the closest to this pulse of this carbon market. So um, here's what I need help with.
Yeah.
We can sit here and talk all about this regenerative and all this, but what is the buyer of the carbon? What are they wanting? Do they want to see what is their definition of regenerative farming, or what's their definition of qualifying to be in this carbon market? The buyer of the carbon.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely do not really know yet as far as the
Yeah.
buyers of these credits and stuff. They don't really know exactly what they're after. Now, carbon, at least in regenerative, they don't know exactly what they're after. They're after carbon credits. So there's carbon credits are not a new thing. Carbon credits are very common, lots and lots of money that goes into it every year and has been for a long time. But most of those credits are coming from forestry or from direct capture from other
Right.
sectors,
Right.
not necessarily, very less than 1% has come from agriculture. So the key thing I think that they're looking for is they're trying to get these verified carbon offsets within ag, but nobody's fully like really been able to do it yet. Like to one of the global registries like a Vera Gold Standard, somebody like that. Nobody's actually created one of those yet. There
Yeah.
has been credits developed. There's been good programs that have been able to get farmers paid, and that's great. But a lot of these companies are attempting to utilize existing infrastructure to define these credits, and they're trying to force agriculture through these protocols and things like how they define additionality today, how they are calculating these outputs today, how they're some of these definitions just doesn't quite work for ag yet. So they just are trying to force it through some of the current standards, and it just isn't really working. But
Yeah.
so these companies, they want carbon, but right now they're basically paying for a privatized cost share. They're paying for reduced tillage, add cover crop, reduce nitrogen, and then assuming that that's going to get them a carbon output that they want based on some really outdated models. So it might be helping, but it's definitely not very accurate on the real
But
carbon story.
so I mean, we're not even close to a full answer or a full
Now,
system a systems approach here.
the key thing is going to have to be, what I keep saying is, as you point out, like I'm really deep into this. Never thought I was going to be. I mean, it's just kind of coming on my plate, and I'm trying to help figure this out because
Yeah.
I really think there could be massive opportunity for my farm, for me personally, for my company, but just for ag and for family farms at large. Like there is a
Yeah.
good opportunity here to showcase agriculture as part of this solution. These companies are looking for solutions, and we might as well say, hey, we want to be part of your solution. Let's do it. But today, that's not really enabled. And I mean, for example, my farm is really deep into this, and we have no idea what our carbon footprint is.
Yeah.
We can't actually really define it as it exists today. So there's a big disconnect there.
And to me, that's worrisome because we've been.
Yeah.
I see. Here's what I'm really worried about, Mitchell. Is I know this doesn't seem like we've been on this a long time, but in today's world and as quick as things move, we have been on this quite a while, and people are going to start getting discouraged and maybe move away or create situations that are dictated by their own means, So I
Mhm.
don't know. I don't know what the answer to this. I still, a lot of times I say we need a definition, and I think we
Yeah.
we need. I think we need a definition here for what is going to be acceptable. Now, I think we all agree that you're going to have to implement the soil health principles.
Totally. I mean, that's how the carbon gets in the ground through photosynthesis. I mean, that's the whole driver of regen ag is the
Yeah,
carbon. It's the
yeah,
carbon, it's feeding the microbes, and you got to have living roots to be able to do it. And then minimize the disturbance because that throws off the microbes and might release more of that carbon than what you have plants that can actually
right,
capture it and take it back in. It's just doing that with a little bit different angle that it's, focused on the actual elemental carbon itself. But it's a little pigeonholed, versus regen ag that's more holistic. But
yeah,
so
yeah,
it's got to be still those principles, but there's more to it than that, like based on what type of equipment you're using. Like, I would argue that, you utilizing the equipment that you use as you're planting that cover crop. I could be planting the exact same cover crop, but my carbon footprint is going to be different because I have different equipment than yours.
right,
Today, that's a small just example nuance, but it's not
right.
factored in. It's not factored into the calculations today.
No, no. I think we have a long way to go on this, and maybe the longer this takes, I don't know if perfected is the right word, but the more fair it will be for both. I mean, it's
Yeah.
got to be fair for the farmer
I call it
and the
leveling the
buyer.
playing field. Yeah, we got to be more transparent here. We got to level the playing field to
Yeah,
enable more people to participate, and it's just got to be transparent. So, what I keep pushing back to on this, and to your point directly, today farmers get paid based on yield. How many bushels do you produce? And you get paid based on how many bushels. And we've gotten pretty
right,
darn good at growing a heck of a lot of bushels in the methods that we've done here today. And it's that way because the more you produce, the more you get paid. And that's what farmers look at. We never
right,
look at how you got there or the
right,
other implications of those methodologies. So now, if we can look at here's how you calculate your actual carbon impact and reward growers based on that, now we can, if it's transparent and you can say, if you do this, here's exactly the amount of additional carbon that you're going to get. Here's the price for it. And you can measure out if it's going to be worth it or not for your
yeah,
own operation. If we can become transparent at that level, now we can really get creative and farmers can be innovative, and if you can be rewarded based on your actual outcome, now we can really get somewhere.
yeah,
Now farms that are really pushing hard, farms like yours, we're trying to do some of these things to really drive and draw down more carbon today just by the means of soil health, not because of the direct carbon capture side, other than more liquid carbon to feed the
right.
microbes. But um, until farmers get rewarded based on merit and based on innovation, based on the outcomes, I really think these programs are going to struggle.
Yeah, I mean, most people probably know where I stand on how I would have this cover market set up. How would just, quickly, how would you
Yeah.
what metrics and how would you have this set up? Just give us
Yeah.
your how you would set this thing
So it's
up.
so it's what we're working on. Okay, everyone and their dog is going after these new USDA grants and stuff. Okay, the
Yeah,
Carbon Smart Commodities grants, where the USDA is putting
yeah,
$1 billion towards this. Okay, and we've been working on one as well. And in our program is to go out there and go to a wide, diverse array of farms and help them to define their actual what I call carbon cost of production on a per acre and then therefore on a per bushel basis. And how
Okay,
I would
wait a minute.
calculate it,
Wait a
yeah,
minute. You're doing this with their current
current
operation, the current way
practices.
they're farming.
What is your carbon footprint today?
Okay.
And I want to go
Okay.
to your farm. I want to
So
go
we're
to your
drawing a
farm and go,
baseline.
what is your baseline today? So that's what drives me nuts about so many of
Yeah.
these programs. They want to establish regional baselines. They want to establish historical baselines for that individual farm. And my whole thing is, why don't we look at what is your actual carbon footprint today? And
Yeah.
if you're losing carbon as a result of your practices, if you're losing carbon, maybe you don't get penalized today. I don't want that. But maybe you can earn some mitigation credits
Right.
as you decrease your losses by by reducing your synthetic nitrogen, for example, that
Right.
has a big impact, or reducing your tillage. Maybe you're not going to go cold turkey to full blown, this direction, but at least if you know that today you're losing carbon, maybe you can earn some mitigation credits until you're actually sequestering and drawing down carbon as a net result of your practices. Now you can earn a true sequestration credit, which should be the premium that enables growers who are actually offsetting their own footprint and that of others. You really get paid. So
Yeah.
meaning we got to calculate how much fuel to use, how much nitrogen to use, how much electricity, LP, some of those
Yeah.
losses and natural losses from the soil, how much you're losing, plus how much you actually drawing down based on your cover crop, your photosynthetic activity, your amount of biomass in your covers, in your diverse covers, and in your rotations. And we can quantify these things today. We just need better ways to calculate and model that out, looking at modeling down the depth of soil and based on the photosynthesis, so we can really enable more farmers to do this at a manner that's going to be feasible.
Yeah. So okay, let's hold right there for a second. I want to go back. So now your team is pulled into the farm, and
Yeah,
wouldn't you suspect that this exercise, as deep as you're going to go, is probably something they've never done before this to this depth? And I
definitely.
mean, forget the carbon markets. If they just see in front of them, what, my gosh, look at what I'm truly spending on inputs here.
Yeah,
I think that alone wakes them up.
that's what I've really been pushing on too. Is it's been really eye opening for me to just be able to go to a farm and say, here's a very simple profile. And we already have this built in topsoil, and I don't want to jump the gun and get into that, but you can map out your fields, you can populate, here's all those practices that I'm already doing.
Yeah.
Now, today we don't collect what machinery you're using and some of these specifics. Like that is pretty intense.
Right.
And so if
It
we're
would
going to
take
go this
hours.
route, it's going to take some time unless we're working with like John Deere or some of these other places where you already have some of this information already. The
Yeah.
information is just very segmented.
Yeah.
We just need to get it pulled together to
Yeah.
define what are those passes across the field, what's the equipment that you're using with it, what's some of the nuances to that equipment, to be able to really define your actual impact on a per acre and then therefore per bushel basis. Because what we want is, like in your story, Rick, that you're selling grain at a premium because of those practices behind it. Now, part of it is the organic certification that's very clear, and
Right.
you do XYZ things and then you qualify, and you can't do these other XYZ things, but it
Right.
doesn't necessarily give you a number or rank. It's either organic or not organic. There's not a
Right.
continuum to it. So we got to define, exactly what your impact is today. And what I'm really interested in is not just carbon, but here's your soil health impact, your
Well,
annual
yeah.
soil health gains overall, or your annual return to nitrogens, things like that.
I mean, we got so many places we can go here, but
Yeah.
let me, I got
Just
a
laying it
three,
all out there, Rick. I said we got to
but
just throw it all out there, and then we're going to figure it all out as we go.
yeah, I know. But if I just sit here and think about, if I'm a lending institution, okay,
Yeah.
and I am now lending operating money to a farmer, I want to see, where's that topsoil report at? I want to
Yeah.
see where are you at? What are you spending on pencils or pen? I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That
Where's the financing going? And especially as more of these companies, more of these banks are going to be looking at what is your actual carbon footprint? Because we have to think about this. We are the banks, essentially, anyway. I'm
yeah.
simplifying. We are essentially the bank's third, or the bank's tier 3 carbon footprint.
Uh-huh.
Okay. in their facilities, they have a carbon footprint to their lights and their energy usage and their equipment,
Yeah.
stuff like that, and their fuel.
Yeah.
And it's not that much. I mean, they don't have that big of an impact. Now with, more machine learning and the computing and stuff, sure, maybe it's got more of a carbon intensity, but we're their carbon footprint. And they're going to need to know how to report that to their shareholders. And we're going to have to know how to define our actual impact on each one of our farms in order to help them to meet their sustainability goals and do their reporting.
Right. Right. So we got a question. I'll get to it in just a second. Okay, let's just keep going here, just a little bit deeper now. So, the farmer, the landlord, whoever has gone on to Continuum, was it continuumag.com or
No, just topsoil.ag or continuum.ag. Yeah.
okay, okay, and they sign up and they say, you know what, I'd really like the looks
Yeah.
of this. Come on out.
Yeah.
But you okay? So now you're baselining this farm for them. So then, when that day comes that carbon company is ready to talk to Farmer Brown, it's there. It's all ready to
Yeah.
just push to them, right?
Yeah. Yep. So the data is already there and it's already defined. So it's basically, here's your practices, here's your soil data, and here's your plan. Because this isn't just here's where I'm at now, but it's your plan. Because to your point before, if they're loaning your money or if you're part of their portfolio or whatever, they're going to need to see, what are we going to do going forward here? It's like your
Yeah,
budget. What's your
yeah.
budget? What's your projections?
See,
And where
this
are we
is
already
way
at?
more. This Mitchell, this is way more than just talking about carbon markets. This is
None,
talking
yeah, the
about
whole thing.
financial stability,
Yeah,
how fluid are you, all
correct.
this.
Correct. Because there's going to be different unique financing scenarios and stuff around sustainable finance and stuff. These things
Yeah,
already exist. This is not
yeah,
hypothetical stuff. Okay. This is
no,
all reality. And it's happening in a lot of other sectors and stuff. And
yeah,
already with different institutions, you might be able to get funding that's earmarked for certain projects. And today, a lot of that, comes through government funding and stuff. It's earmarked for certain utilization. It's going to be the same type of thing for utilizing it for sustainability initiatives and to improve some of these metrics, that there's going to be special financing and such like that available. We're just going to have to show, what our opportunities are to improve and what's it going to cost and what the return on investment is going to be financially and in terms of carbon or other environmental outcomes.
right, right. Well, the question, I'm sorry, I cannot see all, I don't know why I can't see the whole name. Why not base carbon sequestration on actual measures? Now, I know how I'm going to answer that. Go ahead, Mitchell. Why
Yeah.
not base carbon sequestration on actual measures?
Yep. So I think it definitely has got to be on some actual measures, but we've got to utilize some of these models and some of these entering and practices and stuff in combination in order to make it scalable and more cost effective. Now today, and especially today, and with today's value of a ton of carbon, these companies are selling carbon. So they're paying a lot of these companies today. They're paying the farmer $15 to $20 per ton for carbon, and they're selling it right now for around $25 to $30 a ton.
Okay.
Okay, and they're making a little bit of margin on it. Of course, they have to. It's a business.
Yeah.
So there's not that much money in it when you factor all the costs and all the things that go into this and sampling and all that. So the sampling itself can be really expensive, especially doing it at the scale that these guys are talking. So what
Yeah.
it'll be is basically think of it as cross-referencing that. Here's what the model is saying that you're doing based on plugging all your information. Today, my issue with these programs today is that you don't plug in enough specific info to get a very accurate reading.
Yeah.
But just because these models were not intended to have these multi-billion and trillion-dollar markets built on top of them. They were
Yeah.
built for basic academic purposes at universities and through USDA and such. So we just have to make them more robust to be able to quantify and be more specific around all the nuances of each of our farms. Then we can spot check and do direct measurement of those carbon pools to cross-reference it versus those models as we go. And what I'm really interested in is, as we push to be more innovative, can we do better than the model? And then therefore we should get paid because we're pushing beyond what the model says, because we're doing practices that are more innovative than what the models are initially built around. And that
Right.
direct measurement today, how they do that direct measurement is a test called dry combustion organic carbon. That's how it's done today. And but what I think we're missing is that carbon is not just in that one form.
That's right.
Carbon is a solid, a liquid, and a gas, and it's very
That's right.
dynamic. And it's not just sitting there stable, permanent for 100 years like they're talking. It does need to be drawn down into the system where maybe it is, permanent for 100 years. But like Dr. Jerry Hatfield says, it's not stable. We're just lengthening the cycle, which is exactly right. Because that carbon is so important to grow our crops.
Right. Right. So let's see. I had a question and I lost it. I lost it. Sorry about that. Well, thanks for the question. Again, I apologize. I see DE is what I see. That's all I see. So I'm sorry on the name, but thank you for that question. Well, Mitchell, you want to say any more about it in this carbon arena, or you want to move on?
I mean, I think the biggest thing there, to put it to bed, is there are some really interesting things happening. There's some very interesting projects that are going to be coming about. The funding for those goes out maybe by late summer or fall, and they'll be trying to roll out those programs in early 2023.
Okay.
So it's a little ways down the road for some of those. Other than that, I mean, some of these other carbon programs today, maybe some people are involved. And my rule of thumb is, hey, if you got a program that's long-term risk adverse, meaning not a long-term contract, you know how to get out of it. And if it pays you some decent money for your family operation for the effort you got to put in, and it works for you today, sweet. Hey, let's do it. Rock and roll. Awesome. But just know that these programs, they need a lot of development. They need a lot of work. I think we're moving in the right direction. But overall, too, any of these programs, it is only the cherry on top. It is only an additional carrot that I hope can drive our ability to invest in our family farms and take this further. And I think it's bringing more people to the table, which is really interesting. It's definitely helping our space move. But the real gains here in the long term is actually understanding the principles and controlling what you can control. Don't rely on these outside forces.
Yeah. All right. So I got my question back. I lost a minute ago. Do you think that companies, I'm talking mega companies here, will just implement their own rules of what they think would be a carbon farming, let's call it carbon farming structure for the farmer?
Good question. I think there's going to have to be some kind of standards and some type of, at least if we're going to define some things in there, there's going to have to be some of that. No, I think some of the different companies that are out there connected with the consumer, building brands or building their own sustainability infrastructures and stuff. Yeah, sure. They can define it in different tiers and I've seen some creative things happening there, and you're involved in some of that kind of stuff too. That there's some groups that are going to be developing, different premiums or different markets, or they're packaged differently or graded differently based on their outcomes. I think there's some real opportunity for that, and each one can be different, but all of these are going to be driven by data and by being able to tell that story. Some of it, like in your use case that you're talking there, I think a lot of that can be a lot of like the story connectivity, and it they are highlighting your website or your your social media channels and stuff to really showcase that family farm and where this came from, and being able to connect that way. I think there'll be some opportunity there, but I think a lot of this is going to have to come down to some structure and some standards around, what is the impact. So it's going to be a blend of both. The structure and the standards, I definitely think we're pretty far out yet. At least, I mean, to have any kind of thing at scale, like, I don't know. I mean, I can't completely predict the future, but I mean, I want to say 5 years, maybe like 3 at the earliest. Have any kind of real something with substance that can be scaled. I think we're pretty far.
Yeah. So do you see this happening in the free world, or do you see this? Do you see government intervention here? What do you see?
I mean, I hope that it can be free world. Now I think the government side is, because I think in the free world we're gonna have to continue to have nuances here, and we're gonna have to continuously implement. And when it's just government, it's gonna be a one-time kind of thing, and it might not be able to have iterations as quickly as what we're gonna need.
Yeah.
Now I think on the government side, where I can see them is kind of what they're doing now with funding innovation and funding the free market to take this and drive. They might be able to help to level the playing field by providing some of the more transparency into this, maybe helping with how do we define some of these things and open up,
Or third
make it
party verification.
maybe. I mean, they would have some tools that can be used, like
Yeah.
access to the satellites and access to some of these tools. But I don't know that they need to be the ones that are coming in and attempting to verify everything. I don't think that's good. I mean, shoot, they struggle right now to verify is that CRP actually still in CRP and stuff like that. So I don't know that that's the right thing, but they could definitely provide some of the infrastructure that
Yeah.
other third party verifiers can be built upon.
Okay. All right. All right, very good. Well, I know you're close to the pulse of this, so I'm glad
Yeah.
we spent some time on this. I know you get tired of talking about it, but
No, it's really interesting, and obviously it takes a ton of my time, and I'm really interested in it because I see the opportunity. And I mean, Rick, it's not like a couple of years ago. This was like, oh wow, there's like millions, maybe a couple $1 billion. What's good to it? No, it's trillions.
yeah, it's trillions. Oh
It's
yeah,
trillions.
yeah,
It's crazy. So like, of course, I got to try to figure out how to get some of that,
yeah, yeah. I
and
know.
and to get it to be real. Like, I just don't want it to be greenwashed and just have it ruin the whole thing. That's why I've been focused on this too. Is I'm passionate about the whole soil health regen movement.
Yeah.
And if this carbon thing comes in
The
and puts a black eye on this, then it just hurts what we're trying to do here, the
yeah,
real opportunity for farmers, which is the promise of soil health.
yeah, and that's exactly where I'm at. I'm on the soil health, human health side of the equation.
Yeah,
If they want to tag carbon along somewhere down the road, fine.
sure.
But we have to get, and then that leads me into another question here. So, okay, so let's assume that your timeline's about right. Let's say 3 years and we're
Yeah,
giddy up, let's go. Mitchell, we don't have enough teachers, we don't have enough cover crop seed, we don't have
yep,
enough of anything.
correct. A huge concern with a lot of this. That's why mandates and one size fits all stuff is not going to be the way to do this. And
No,
regulation, not going to
no.
be the way to do it. The stuff is not there. The teachers aren't there. And that's what we were kind of saying before. There can be some major dollars going to farms. So a big carrot
Yeah,
coming our way in a couple different programs, which is sweet. Like that can really help to decrease the risk. That can really get a lot of people on board. But no matter how big that carrot is, if you don't know what the heck you're doing,
that's
it's not
right.
going to work.
No,
So
I
that's
mean,
what, and that, I mean, that's what I'm really been trying to scale. And that's what my initial thought process of how do we scale this to millions and millions and, tens of millions of acres and bigger.
yeah,
It's going to take some real processes and some real
that's right.
infrastructure and the data systems because there's not enough people that can go and teach it.
That's right. That's exactly right. And you know as well as anybody, Mitchell, that if that farmer who all along the way has been saying this isn't going to work on my farm, you
Yeah.
introduce a cover crop on his farm and it fails, it's over. He's
They're going to be
not
done.
coming back.
Yeah, so they might take a bunch of money here for the first couple of years, but then especially if a bunch of farmers don't have success with it, that money's going to dry up because they're not
Yeah,
going to see the outcomes. And then
yeah,
the farmers also are going to say, well, this still, even with that big money, wasn't worth it. It might entice them to keep with it for a while, but it entices them still to do the bare minimum. So what these programs do is it entices them try to get as much money as you can, but do the bare minimum to still check the box and get that money. It doesn't focus on the real outcome, which is my
yeah,
point with all
yeah.
this. Until you can be rewarded based on the real bottom line net outcome, like you are
Right,
with yield,
right.
then it's not really going to go and really going to be there.
See,
So, and even with yield, of course, has a lot of issues too with being propped up with crop insurance, things like that. And there's issues there, but until we get to that point, these things are going to struggle.
yeah, I at this when you get to this kind of a monstrosity we're talking about here,
Yeah.
simplicity is the best course of action here.
Yeah.
I maybe I oversimplify things, but you know, you are deep into the handy test, which is where I want to go
Yeah.
next. but
Yep.
that has a soil health score on it. So why
Yeah.
can't we use some kind of that data to then
Yeah.
drive to a solution that works for the farmer and the buyer of this carbon credit?
The biggest piece with the Haney test. So there's, I mean, I've been deep into the Haney test for a number of years. That's what I started the company around initially, and that's what
Yeah.
we've really built things around. Okay, and I
And
can definitely
and
dig into that. But go ahead.
and Mitchell, you've got the largest collection of data points, right?
Of like data of private data and stuff, and
Yeah.
within our data set, yeah, we got a lot of data, and we've been doing as much as weekly soil sampling for the last couple of years, really trying to learn and understand the nuances. We've done a lot of sampling,
Mhm.
and the why I like the Haney test on the carbon side, yeah, it gives a score and overall outcome, which I think is good, but these companies are still going to want to take that down to tons of carbon and kind of the metric that they want to see as well. Now, I like the overall score because of other pieces that can be built on top of it.
Right.
And it can be a good indicator, maybe kind of part of your that sustainable supply chain and stuff like you were talking before. Our growers are improving their overall soil
Right.
health by X amount, or that gets into the regen verified piece and stuff too. This or regen zero. I think stuff like that, where they're using multiple nuances of this, that can be a really good opportunity. Within carbon, the key thing on the Haney test is it quantifies the solid, liquid, and gaseous phase of carbon. That's the key.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that these groups are going to pay us no time soon. Are they going to pay us for the gaseous and the liquid phase? But why they're important is that those are the leading indicators to the lagging indicator of the solid form of
Solid
carbon.
phase. Yeah.
And on the farm, on the agronomy side, we can help farmers to move those leading indicators much quicker than we can move the lagging indicator.
Yeah.
And to simplify it, it's thinking of organic matter. Sure, we can see organic matter build up in a couple of short years for sure. You've seen it. We've been having great luck with it, but you can't necessarily see the real build up on an annual basis or even quicker than that. But with biological activity through CO2 burst or through the water extractable carbon, you can see that within a couple months, even or sooner of
Yeah.
doing some of these things.
Yeah.
And then you, at least in our farmer mindset, it's like, okay, I'm tracking on the right direction. I'm seeing some things happening. If this cover crop blend did different than this cocktail over here, whatever, versus this, okay, maybe I want to do more of that because here's how it tracks to my outcomes and I can model that out over time. That's
Yeah.
why I like doing that. But also, of course, the Haney test is so important because it meets farmers where they're at on managing fertility. And yeah, I mean, on average, we've been able to help farmers reduce their need for fertilizer by $106.24 an acre. I mean,
Yeah.
so that's what I love about it too. It's like put money in the farmer's pocket right away. Cause now I haven't heard you say this for a while, working from a position of strength or
Uh-huh.
how do you say it? Because that's exactly what this is. Now I've got dollars in my pocket. I'm in a
Yep.
better financial position than what I was before right away.
Yep.
I was going to spend all this money. I've got better data. I don't need to spend this much anymore because I'm looking at a different pool in pretty much every case.
Yeah.
Our lowest that we saw we were able to cut back on fertilizer last year was something like $67 and change per acre.
Yeah.
It was the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
We charge, and the Haney test costs about $10 an acre.
Yeah.
It's like
I mean, you know, you know,
it's just been such an easy like initial foot in the door, and especially with the fertilizer prices now, it's like, guys, why spend and waste more money than what we absolutely need to be spending?
right. That's right. Yeah, and not only to be looking at this from a dollar and cents point of view, but to be looking at it as a good steward to the land and a good steward to the ecology, everything. So it's just, I want to get into data here, and I get Dean, I guess was the name. I'm sorry, I can't see your whole name. I thank you for the question. He's got just a thought here.
Yeah,
Standards need to be established first, then the markets will come later. So
yeah, I
that's
think that's
right.
exactly it.
That's
That's
right.
exactly it. We're trying to jump the gun a little too much, and I don't want to name names stuff, but a lot of people have seen that. I think in this space we've been kind of over promised and under delivered to, at least as a
Yeah.
ag community as a whole. This
Oh
all
yeah.
needs some development here. Like there's a lot of money that's trying to go to this, but the science isn't fully there yet. And yeah, once we develop some better standards and we show the world how we can really quantify this and what we can really do, now we can get there.
Right.
Now, I don't want to jump the gun too much, but I want to I want to focus on showing that we can do way better than just very minute changes and build up to soil organic matter. We
Yeah.
can, and if we do this right, and you've seen it, and we've seen it, we can go and make big changes to that organic matter, to that structure, to that overall soil health. But to their piece, it's organic matter, and then therefore a portion of that being the organic carbon. We can make big changes to that in a relatively short amount of time, and way bigger than what they're initially modeling out, and it actually makes the finances work really well. What I
Right.
mean by that is, don't just look at sequestering half a ton per acre, but get, maybe a couple tons per acre. I really think it's doable.
Yeah. And again, this goes back to, get in touch with the right folks to show you how to get started, that teaching
Yeah,
process, and get the right cover crop mixes at the right time. I mean, all this is very important, and context, Mitchell, where
it's
we
number
are
one.
in the world is I'm right in line with the Missouri-Iowa border. So all of Iowa is north of me. Now you're not that far north of me, so we're similar.
No, yeah,
But you talk about Lauren, Steinlage, and now we're in Northeastern. Then you go even, I got Mitch Brummond up in Minnesota. I mean, now
yeah,
you're talking, it's different now.
way
The
different.
same principles apply,
Yep,
but it's different timing, different species, different everything.
yep, yep, and different expectations of the outcomes. I
Yeah,
think we're gonna have to factor that in. But with all of this, I think there are some nuances to it that, yeah, the further north you go, you have less days that you can really photosynthesize, really pump carbon. You
yeah,
also have less days that you're burning up carbon, that your
it's
microbes are
true.
really cranking too. So there's a
It's true.
balance to it. And that's why, in general, those guys up there in Minnesota, their baseline organic matter is probably higher than ours.
Yeah, yeah,
They're starting from a higher level, or their natural system is probably at a higher level than ours, because ours is cranking more days out of the year than theirs. That's why they have
I
those
never,
heavy black soils
I never thought about that, but yeah, like Adam Chappell down in, was it Arkansas? I mean,
in
it's,
Tennessee. Yeah, or
it's
Arkansas. Sorry,
nonstop.
Adam in Arkansas. Yeah,
It's
it's
not,
nonstop down there.
it's nonstop.
But that's also why Adam and these guys down south have the ability to leverage that
Yeah,
and to grow crops every day out of the year, like we don't have necessarily the ability to.
right.
They can
Yeah.
be pumping carbon in the ground every day.
Yeah, again, context. I mean, this is so
100%.
important. Hey, we've got a question here from Zach Laughlin. Mitch, can you speak about your weekly Haney tests? At what point in the growing season do you stop?
Yeah.
Have a farmer that I work with that wants to do this on a field in 6 different strips. I'm worried about cost.
Nice. Yeah, cost is definitely going to be a concern. I mean, the a Haney test lab fee, is typically around about $50 on average. Maybe you can work with the lab or try to find a grant or something like that to do it. And Zach, good to have you on too. But we've been doing it. Now, I was working directly with Dr. Rick Haney for a while when he was at the USDA, and we were working some projects together. Okay, so that's why I've been able to make this really work. Now I'm working with Rick and with Lance over at the Regen Ag Lab,
Yeah,
and spend this all out of my own pocket. All of my research stuff that I've done, so much of the development that I've done, it's come out of my own pocket.
sure.
And utilizing the revenues that we've had coming in, and utilizing our own money to build this.
Yeah,
But I typically try to start right around 1st of April. We just started doing our stuff this Monday for this year. So typically around the 1st of April, kind of as green up is starting to happen and before planting. And I typically like to go till right around Thanksgiving.
hmm
So we're going pretty intense.
hmm
Now, one of the other things you can maybe do is try to target weekly in the earlier parts of the year, when it really is going to matter, when you're looking at that cover crop
Yeah,
uptake and cover crop nutrient degradation. And then maybe later you can just do it monthly or every 15 days or something like that to save on cost. But it is amazing to see some of these changes and trends and stuff over time. So definitely, whatever you guys do, would love to show you guys and compare notes and stuff. We're definitely trying to get more of ours out there and build it into the software. And now I've got so much of this data, it's like, okay, now let's really use it. My number one goal with what we've been doing is that cover crop is my offensive management tool.
that's right.
Okay, that cover crop is my nutrient stabilizer, and I need to know how much is in that cover crop
Right.
and when do I get it back. And I mean, Rick, your data is amazing on that, on the above ground biomass.
Yeah.
I'm looking at what's available below the soil.
Yeah. Yeah. See and we got to remember here, folks. I don't care if you're doing Haney tests or traditional soil tests. It's a snapshot in time, and Mitchell
Yeah.
nailed it a minute ago. He's looking at trends. What's the data telling? What's the organic carbon doing? Is it trending up or is it trending down?
Yeah.
Because we all know, Mitchell, I could hire you to come out and pull tests tomorrow. You come back in 3 weeks and pull them again. They're going to be different numbers.
They're going to be different. And I love that Rick, of course, gets a lot of pushback, Rick and Liz, on like, well, guys, the numbers are, it's not consistent. It changes. And their
Yeah.
answer is, well, yeah, we're
Yeah.
measuring a living
Live.
system. If it didn't change, I mean, it's dead. Just
That's
like us.
right.
If our numbers, if you're checking my heartbeat now or my heart rate now versus my heart rate in 3 weeks, and it doesn't change, good chance it might be dead. Like
Yeah.
the chance of it staying the exact same between those two instances probably isn't that great of a chance.
That's
So
right.
it's the same thing in the soils, but you're so right on watching those trends and stuff. And what I'm trying to gather is being able to go out there and identify what is my carbon to nitrogen ratio doing, how active is my soil, how much food do those microbes have, and the more food they've got, the faster I'm going to break down some of that residue, the faster I'm going to cycle additional nutrients and
Yeah.
utilize some of those balances.
Well,
And really what I've been factoring is I just want to factor on the timing of the nutrient application. And again, use that cover crop as my nutrient stabilizer.
that's right. Now, I want to quickly go through what we do. We look at a field, and typically what I try to do is regionalize the acres on the farm. So, like if you've got an area that's got 500 acres, I try to
Yeah.
pick one field that will be a representation of that 500 acres. We will pull samples, geospatially marked, from the best producing spots, the worst producing spots, and the average. And then we're pulling these 3 times a year. Now I know that's a lot of testing, but I don't know when. I'm with you, Mitchell. I want to know when this stuff's peaking and when are we coming back down.
Yeah.
So, Zach, I love the question. You've got to get. I think that my answer to your question would be you've got to get your customer into that comfort zone of what's this information worth to him. So, how many tests do you want to pull? And
Yeah.
what'd you say he's wanting
What's
to do?
your goal?
Six different
That's some
strips.
6 strips. I'm assuming of different cover crops or different blends or
Yeah,
whatever. And I think that's a good angle to this. And to your point, Rick, yeah, start with what's your goal. Okay, if we're going to
yeah,
spend all this money and all this time, what's our goal? What are we trying to learn here? And again,
yeah.
for me, it's that cover crop's my nutrient stabilizer. I want to know how much is in that cover crop, and then know when do I get it back, and now I can manage my fertilizer accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, when you start down this journey, I mean, for us, we looked at cover crops as a defensive mechanism to stop
Mm-hmm.
erosion.
Yep.
Now they are an absolute offensive juggernaut because they are recycling nutrients, bringing them back, able to go back through the profile. I mean, it's just
Yep.
amazing what you can do when you get on this journey.
Same thing. And that's what was just with some guys the other day. And they're like, yeah, we were looking at doing cover crops, but we couldn't figure out how to make it pencil out. And I'm like, you're looking at it wrong. I see how it pencils out a million times over that. I'm spending like my average cover. We haven't been that aggressive. And as you know, Rick, and for everyone else, we're planting pretty light rates of covers.
Yeah.
And because of my context, my area, and because we're early into this still, and we still got a long way to go on our farm. We have a lot of things that are not where we need them to be yet.
Sure.
We're planting fairly light rates of these covers, and
What,
we're
20
growing a lot
bucks?
of our own cover crop
20
seed.
bucks an acre?
Oh, 10 on average, 10 to 12.
10.
Yeah, 10 to
10.
12. Oh yeah.
And what I say to guys like that, Mitchell, is pick one thing. Okay, we're going to help you cut your nitrogen by $50 an
10.
acre.
Yeah.
Okay, and you spent 10. But what about P, K, sulfur,
Oh yeah.
boron, manganese?
Oh,
What about all the other
yeah.
stuff that's coming?
Yeah. No, we've cut just so many of these other things, and what's amazing to me, we're not, again, like on your stuff too, or looking at this as a risk component as well, that we're becoming more resilient here, that
Yeah.
we've really, like, we don't replant anymore, and our water infiltrations are now 4 inches of infiltration in 5 minutes, and the organic matter, the water holding, cut back on those nutrients. The organic pools of nutrients are just going bonkers now. We never had that before. And because of that, we now, like, we don't rely on these government handouts and payments and stuff anymore either. Last year was our most profitable year ever with no of those government payments from the federal side. That's the key. Now we're still in some of those. Okay, we haven't gone your full route. I keep pushing down on like that. Why are we even doing this crop insurance? And part of it is where we're at. It's still that safety net.
Yep.
And with the cover crop program for it, we're not actually paying anything out of pocket. But we also know that we're not a risk to the taxpayer because of our system either. We don't have to make claims anymore. The only thing that can really get us and why we're still doing it is hail or a major wind. Okay, might have some problems there. But our cost of production is so low that some of these market trends and stuff, not super worried about that. If we get too much rain, our infiltration is plenty good enough. We don't have enough rain or holding capacity, are utilizing our cover crops to keep that soil temperature cool and stuff. We're not worried about that stuff anymore. That's really empowering. And especially as we've ran the numbers on it, it's like that's what we want. Yeah. And we still have it as a safety net, don't pull, that's a process to get there.
Right.
Yeah.
We're in year 4 now of no crop insurance. I eliminated ARC and PLC. I mean, I'm nothing. We're not even, we're not listed in the directory anymore.
Yeah. It's awesome.
So it's a good feeling. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely think that's where we can really go. And getting to those levels. At this point, it's basically just that it's there. It's not a real line item expense, but we also know that we're not a liability for the taxpayer either. We're not a burden to the system.
And you can sleep at night, so that's okay. It's all right.
It's part of it. I was really pushing on just not doing it, and I'm buddies with the crop insurance guy too, so I'm also trying to help his numbers out, even though I'm not a big number for him. But it's still, it's part of. There's some nuance. So there's some nuances to it.
Yeah. Hey, we've got a question from Ashley Farr. Hi, Ashley. How's it going tonight? In the process of building soil health with biology, is there still a place for GMO seeds? That's a good question.
That's a good question. So we used to run quite a bit of non-GMO soybeans multiple years ago. We brought back the GMOs because we were having some issues with weeds. Now we've taken care of those issues. We're still running GMO seed on our farm. On the beans, it's no seed. They're enlist soybeans. And the big thing there is that we're still burning down the cover crop for the most part when those beans. So on beans, we're going to be planting soybeans first on our farm this year. And so we're planting beans. And that's what we've been doing the last couple of years. This will be year 3 or 4, planting beans first. So we're going to soybeans first, planting them into cereal rye. And we won't terminate that cereal rye until it starts dropping pollen, which will be around the last week of May for us. And those beans will be up and will be about calf high. We did some of your program, Rick, a couple of years ago where we did the roller crimper. It worked really well. Those beans still yielded 70 bushel the acre. They were within about a bushel of the stuff that I just sprayed and did our normal herbicide program on. We had decent kill on the rye. It wasn't great by any means, but obviously the beans did extremely well. Yeah. And we looked at buying a crimper here this year. We were pricing out. We would need it probably 30 footer for our operation. Cost about $35,000. And basically at this point, it was still part of the issue for us and being able to pencil that out is we're relay cropping so many of our soybean acres that it would take a lot. I think it would take 10,000 acres to justify it based on the herbicide expense. Yeah. So it would just take some time. And see on the corn program stuff too. Okay, so on soybeans, it's plant beans green, terminate at pollen drop, 1 pass of 1 quart of generic Roundup. That's it.
And you're just going to let that rye just melt down on its own?
Melt down, nothing. Okay. Yep. Melt down. It's going to be 5 foot tall. Melt down over the top. We're going to harvest some of it. The beans will come through. We're looking at, they're naked, everything naked. So, naked seed, no fertilizer on it, 1 pass of herbicide. Hardly any of it will get fungicide. There's still certain areas that Dad does it in, but we've cut a bunch of the fungicide out too. So it's really just cutting back on all that. Our whole farm soybean yield average last year was 69 bushel, was our best yields ever. Doing this system.
County average.
County average, I think for us is like 56 or 58 or something like that. And
Okay.
everyone around us had pretty good soybean yields last year. We definitely did too. So definitely sitting good. We've been trending about that level up above county average here for a while and staying really consistent and continuing to grow. Like I said, last year was the best ever. So that's still got a ways to go. I would love to do the crimper on more, or it's basically we're going to have to really focus on crimping a bunch of stuff or really figure out how to relay even more, which I would love to do because we're having great luck with the relay cropping. This will be our 4th year doing that. It's been really interesting. And in the relay, we're anticipating 0 herbicide in our relay. So that's one of our routes. Okay. So either crimp it and do no herbicide or relay it and do no herbicide that way.
Okay.
And we've been working down our seed banks to get there.
Okay, so Mitchell, let's go back to the program where you're going to plant the beans in at boot stage probably and let them go, and then you're going to spray. What was your pounds per acre of rye planted the previous fall?
So my rye is not going to be a boot stage like yours is when we're planting here, Rick. My rye today is about this big.
Okay.
And
we're
when
looking at planting? As soon as you think it's fit?
Oh yeah, like 3 weeks. And
Okay.
we're planting 4-0. We're planting we're going to do some group 4 beans this year. Okay. So we haven't gone the route that you are with the super late planting. We're going super early planting on the beans and doing that because the reason being is we're planting beans into small rye and letting them compete and grow together.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're getting good consistency on the bean getting up and growing. They're not getting long and stemmy. So we're not seeing them reach the bottom internode, maybe the second one. They'll be a little bit elongated, but we haven't had issues with them falling over and stuff like that. And planting them early with the rye so that the rye can protect it. And we've been having good control of that, utilizing the sunlight during the day, trap that heat overnight, avoiding a lot of the frost. Like I said, naked seed. So we're planting early before some of those disease cycles and stuff kick in as well, and seeing that it's been able to work really well. And again, we're pushing. I mean, we want these beans doing 70 to 80, 85 bushel, and using really full season to be able to do that. Then terminate the bean. Then terminate the rye though later, so the rye won't be terminated until it heads out.
I like that. I like that notion because when you're giving so less competition of that soybean early in its life, I like that. I like that.
I skipped out on the rate. We're only planting this rye at about 45 to 60 pounds per acre ahead of beans. Light rates.
So
now we're planting it pretty early. Yep. The earlier we plant, the lighter. It's tillering out. We're getting great weed control.
Yeah.
And we found that that's enough. And I mentioned, it's super cheap for us to do that.
Yeah.
And for us, it's been good enough for what we need. And but the key, I think, and I think I've heard you say, rye ahead of soybeans is the number one thing that you can be doing to really get this going. But the key has been plant those beans into that rye and let them grow together.
Yeah.
If you get real hot and dry, terminate the rye. It melts down. It provides the armor, and those beans come through, and they're nice and happy. If it's wet and cold, keep the rye growing. It keeps the beans happy, and you can either terminate it later or harvest it. It just gives so many more options, and that's. But then you can optimize the gains there too, because my rye is only this big right now. What the heck's it doing for me? Not a whole lot, but it's gonna be 5 foot before I terminate it. But I'm going to get most of that growth over the next coming months because I don't have the winter and the fall to really enable it to happen.
But you see, you're still utilizing what the power of that rye is doing toward building soil health and recycling 100%. Nutrients because you're letting it grow far into its maturity.
And I would love to have more coverage over the winter, of course, for some of those benefits. But what we're also seeing is when I've got the opportunity to really hammer on building those aggregates, pumping carbon, feeding that microbiome during the spring when I've got the beans and the rye growing together, because it's monoculture rye.
Yeah.
But I've got the beans growing with it in order to get some of that system to work. Now, I'm interested in maybe some more rapeseed or some brassicas and stuff in with ahead of the beans, or maybe we use even just rye and wheat, or maybe some oats in there that would winter kill, or to try to get some more diversity, or maybe frost seed something here in the spring. But just the rye it's just been tremendous. And the biggest thing with it, and last kind of story on this, I'm sure we need to move on, but what's been the most amazing thing to see with some of this, besides the aggregates and the soil structure and the temperature and the water infiltration, all this stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
But a data piece here, because I know that's what we want to hit on too. These soybeans have to nodulate so freaking much because there is no nitrogen in there. They are not allowed to be lazy.
Yeah.
If soybeans have nitrogen, they'll be lazy. They don't want to nodulate. They don't want to give the microbes all their carbon, but ours have to.
Yeah.
We are seeing in the fall, following a rye crop, we're seeing 100 to 120 units of organic nitrogen out there available for our next year's corn crop. Organic nitrogen,
That's
stable.
That's stable.
Stable units. The nitrate levels are typically an average of 5 part per million. The ammonium levels are less than that. So my nitrate, I've got 5 part per million. That's about 10 pounds. That's out there. It's cycling. And I hope that my cover crop is going to hold on to that and that I don't lose it. But it's very, very small amount, 5 part per million, where typically we're looking at, to grow a crop, you want it to be around 35 part per million. Ours are always in the single digits, but it's the organic nutrients that are just through the roof. And that's what I want. And that's why we've been able to cut back on our fertilizer so much.
Yeah. Yeah. You see, there's just so many symbiotic relationships that we don't know yet. And this is a classic example. You're exactly right. If you put that grass with that legume, it's going to force that legume to fix even more.
Yeah.
And
we did not see that before. And especially where that relay was, we're seeing an extra 60 units of nitrogen in the next May for the corn crop, extra 60 units, and it's all in the organic form. We had that relay crop.
Wow. Well, the audience wants to know about your corn program, and then we also want to know, they want to know more about your relay program. So pick the corn first.
Yeah. Well, the relay though, I basically have already put to bed. So it's still the same thing. The 45 to 60 units of 45 to 60 pounds in the fall of the rye, soybeans into it.
Spacings though, Mitchell. Give your spacings.
It's all 7.5. Yep, 7.5 inch drilled, and we're drilling the rye. And so all of our cover crops in the fall are drilled with the Great Plains 20-foot no-till drill, 7.5 inch spacings. We did get a Montag air delivery system this year to put on the vertical till. It's basically going to be the exact same type of soil system, just 30 foot at a time versus 20 foot, less wear and tear on the drill. And then it's got a dual bin system, so I can run more blends, or I can play around with more things with a Montag system, a little bit more versatility. So, but right now on the relay is typically 60 pounds of rye drilled. We do have some Elbon rye that we're trying this year, that varietal, and but mostly just been VNS cheap rye. We've played around with a little bit of nitrogen on it. Haven't seen a whole lot. We've played around with some fungicide on it. Haven't seen a whole lot. It's soybeans drilled into it, used very full season. I'm planting them pretty early, kind of last of April, 1st of May. Planting them early when the rye is pretty small, maybe 10 to 12 inches tall. And the beans are being drilled as well, typically on a 3-degree angle the other direction. I like to plant cover crops kind of on a 3-degree, angle, and chop up some of the corn stalks, and 3 degrees the other way on the beans, and then combine straight. And the beans are naked enlist soybeans from Stein, anywhere from a 3.4 to now a 4.0 maturity. Through 3.6, 3.8 has been working really well for us. Now we're going to try a group 4. Typical for our area, we've been using the 2.8 to a 3.4. So for context, we're getting real full season here. Really critical because of the photo period and because we're planting early and we're playing with the sunlight. We're going to be harvesting that rye in July, hopefully late in the first week, maybe early second week of July.
Okay, so no controlled traffic areas. You're driving right over the beans.
Right over the beans.
Okay.
It's all drilled.
Right.
And now you should probably have control, like our buddy Lauren or like some of these other guys. Okay, that it's probably a better way to do it. Yeah. But my goal is the soybeans. The rye is just a bonus. And the rye, last year we were really dry, and we were, VNS rye, and just harvested a whole bunch of just cover crop. We weren't even planning on relaying it. And it did 15 to 20 bushel the acre. Nothing crazy, but it's only planted out a bushel. Like, that's kind of my goal. If I can be doing 30, 35 bushel rye, that'd be amazing. That's what we did the year before, 30 bushel rye. The beans are still doing around 70 bushel the acre. We've done 3 years of replicated trials with Iowa Soybean Association, seeing around a 3/4 of a bushel yield loss on those soybeans. Even with run them over, we have fat tires on the combine, 30-foot draper head. We're running over plenty of beans.
Mm-hmm.
We just got the draper for the first time this year. You do not have to have that. We ran a regular soybean cutter, a soybean head, soybean platform before, 25-foot, worked fine. The draper head definitely helps on the rye a little bit, probably a little bit less header loss.
Yeah.
The big reason that we got it though was when harvesting the soybeans, you got a lot of straw, a lot of material to run through there. That
Oh, yeah.
draper head helps it to be a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, and what I like about your system here, Mitchell, is your system can go to scale now. You can be on thousands of acres and this will work.
Yeah, the thing that I like about it even more than that is we didn't change anything about our system.
Yeah.
And I've really tried to do that with all of our different trials. The cover crop stuff we do, the 60-inch stuff that we've done, the relay cropping. It's basically my normal soybean program, okay, or my normal cover crop program, maybe a little heavier. It's basically my normal soybean program, maybe a little bit fuller season bean,
Yeah.
but we're kind of doing some of that anyway. But it's less herbicide and less fertilizer and less fungicide. I got to pull the combine out again in July and get it all shined up. And, we
Oh,
got to
yeah.
run the combine more and we got to utilize it across more acres and harvest some of this stuff and change up some of those windows. The biggest thing on scale though, is definitely can we get all the rye harvested in the summer in our operation? Dad's out there full time. I'm always running all over the stinking place. And the window to harvest some of this is going to be pretty specific.
Yeah.
That's been our biggest limitation is to scale. Now, last year we did about 85 acres. And we're only farmed about 700 acres, only about 350 acres of beans, and 85 of it had rye on it as well.
Yeah.
That's the most we've done. This year, I think we've got 40 that we're planning on relaying, but I would assume, we might go a little bit more just because it's been working really well.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest thing is the labor and the timeliness of being able to really do it. And we have been throwing the rye on the floor of the bin and running some air on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's been coming off at around 17%. We're trying to get it dried down just a little bit. We'll run a little air on it.
Right.
And either clean out one of our own bins or now we've been renting a bin to be able to do it. Just a small little 18-footer. And it's just more cover crop. See, we're not cleaning it. We're not doing nothing. We got to get it germ tested. If you're going to utilize it if you're going to sell it or if you're going to utilize it for and get cost share on it, you got to get it germ tested. But that's like less than $20 at Iowa State. And pretty simple.
Yeah. That's great. So we've got a question, but I don't want to do that yet. Let's go to your corn.
Now we
program
got to
now.
go to the corn. Okay, so the
What's
corn is where
program?
we still got a long way to go here, but full transparency, here's where we're at. Okay, so following soybeans, first thing, of course, is chasing the combine with the cover crop. This year, it's mostly cereal rye and sweet clover. The rye is only at about 30 pounds of the acre. Typically, we'll start even at 25 and work it up to about 35 ahead of corn. Light rates of the rye. It's got a couple pounds of clover added into it as well. We've got plenty of acres that, because of our relay last year was kind of a diverse cover crop cocktail that we harvested it all and now we planted it all. We got cereal rye, annual rye, hairy vetch, rapeseed, and the sweet clover all mixed together ahead of the corn. So getting some more diversity there. We've had really good luck with hairy vetch. Been using that for multiple years. So typical is cereal rye or winter wheat or maybe a blend, light rates of the cereals, and then getting some of the legumes in there. Hairy vetch, Crimson Club been working well. We've tried a little bit of the Blanza. We'd have to get it planted real early for our area, middle of September for our area, but it does overwinter real well. I do think there's some potential if we go early or interseeding. The hairy vetch has worked really well. Late planted, overwinters really well. Now this year we didn't have much snow, so some concerns there. As part of our system, and now we've got some trials this year with no anhydrous, but a good chunk of our stuff does still have fall anhydrous. Middle of November, right before that ground is frozen up or when it's got some frost in the top, running different stabilizer stuff on it. We've cut the rates back by nearly 50% on a lot of our stuff. So on average now, it's getting anywhere from 80 to 120 units. We have fall anhydrous into the cover with low disturbance knives, and then that's basically our strip till. In the spring, Dad did throw out a little bit of MAP and a little bit of AMS this spring, about 75 pounds of MAP, 25 pounds of AMS. Been playing around with some different stuff like potassium sulfate, but overall really reduce it.
Yeah.
Our program a couple years ago was typically 180 to 220 units of anhydrous with 250 pounds of MAP and 250 pounds of potash. That was our program. Here's where we're at now on the journey. Okay, so in the spring, the dry program went out here a couple weeks ago. Bare minimum kind of stuff and really cutting back. Now we'll plant and run a little bit of infurrow starter, playing around with a lot of biologicals and humics and micronutrient stuff. Run an infurrow, a couple gallons. This year's product is from Nature's. It's a micronutrient stuff just from our local farm service. After we plant the corn, which we're looking at late April, 1st of May. I want to wait on the corn planting, kind of seeing some of your stuff, Rick. I want the legumes to grow a little bit more. I want that soil to warm up. I think I want to play around with the corn planting time here a little bit. We're going still pretty full season on the corn. We'll go anywhere from 105 to 115 day corn. And most of it's going to be 109 to 115 day. And planting that in, it's GMO. A good chunk of our stuff will be non-BT this year. I did some non-BT on my corn last year. Worked really, really well. Working on some stuff with our buddy Russell, seeing about some open pollinated stuff too. I got to get the details locked in there. I would love to try maybe an acre or two of some of that, trying to go the full non-GMO route. After we plant the corn, we'll wait 5 to 10 days, and then we'll hit it with our passive herbicide, heat that up. It's Roundup heated up with a little bit of 32% to get a quicker burn, help on the seed to N ratio. That cover crop will be probably 2 foot tall, maybe 2.5 foot tall at that time. We've been getting more aggressive on that. Typically, my rule of thumb is terminate 48 to 72 hours after planting. Yep. Get it killed down. Plant green every time. I really think plant it green, then terminate it a couple days later, let it kind of perk back up, then hammer it if you're new to it. We're going a little bit more aggressive because we're finding we're have to go higher seed to N ratio covers and more biomass because we're not able to keep the residue on the ground. It's melting down too fast and decomposing too fast. Before canopy, we'll hit it with another pass of herbicide. We can dribble on 32% in season if we want, but on average, we'll be anywhere from 140 to 160 units of nitrogen. Looking for different farms will yield anywhere from an average of 205 to 265. So
that's and Mitchell, those programs you mentioned are so they're easy. I mean, that's doable on large scale.
The biggest thing we've changed is split applying the nitrogen a little bit. We were normal, just a couple years ago, very, very normal. We've done a lot of this in a short amount of time. We really got going into the covers and doing some of this stuff in 2017. Okay, we're very new to a lot of this. We first started using covers in 2013. Dad first started using no-till though in 1978. So this is a long journey, a real long journey. Yeah. And I think there's good opportunity to keep cutting back. We've had no ag lime in the last 10 to 11 years, depending on the farm, and my pHs are all 6.8 to 7.0. Yeah. Organic matter has gone up by as much as 1.4% since 2010. And we were playing with some other numbers. Our organic matters before some of that, they were going down. I've got data to show our organic matters with just our no-till or reduced till, they were going down. Yeah. And now it's so I think as we get that really cranking, we're going to be able to keep being more aggressive on cutting back on some of our inputs. There's no insecticides, no nothing. We've been using the sugar, massively cutting back on the fungicides, the seed treatments, all these things, but it's a part of that program here. We got to get the bricks built up. We got to get our micronutrient balances in order. Got to enable that crop to be healthier on its own.
Yeah, you just can't jump in head first here. Yeah. You've got to build the system.
And I like jumping in. I'm trying to go aggressive. Got a question
here from I think this is Mark Dudla. How you doing, Mark? Anyone harvesting a 3 to 4 way mix of an organic polycrop grain crop?
I think that's a you question.
Yeah, that's a me question. Yes, Mark, we are. We are harvesting peas and wheat together. We're harvesting beans and wheat. I've
Yep.
actually got I've actually got a field that we harvested beans, peas, and wheat together, and it's going to go to a cattle source, so they don't care that it gets separated. But yeah, Mark, I think this is the future. We've
Mhm.
got to be commingling these cash crops. We've got to find the synergies that are there. We're going to have peas and corn together this year, and we're going to have soybeans and corn together. I found a short statured corn that I hope the beans will give us the canopy we need for the weed suppression, and then we're going to harvest corn and soybeans with the grain table. So yeah, good question, Mark. But I think that's where we're headed, and I think one day Mitchell might get there too. I mean, let's think
Yeah.
about wheat, Mitchell. Let's think about in your relay system wheat and
Yeah. Yep.
soybeans.
Yep. So we did wheat the first year. And the biggest thing with the wheat, okay, because we're all winter crops here too. Okay. So it's
Yeah.
winter wheat, winter barley, winter rye. Okay. It's all planted in the fall. The first year doing this, it was winter wheat. And the story on how we got into this was we were using the cover crop. We're in Washington County, Iowa, which has triple the cover crops of any other county in Iowa. In this county, triple the acreage. And at that point in 2016, 2017, we had more cover crop in this one county than all other 98 counties combined.
Why?
Really, really
Why?
unique because there's so many other farms that were like ours that started looking with a no-till in the 70s and 80s, and you're already multi-generations into this. The topography of our farms, the amount of manure that's down here, the proximity to the rivers and stuff down here in this part of Southeast Iowa, and just that sharing of information, and a lot of farmers that are very entrepreneurial, multifaceted, mostly with livestock along with the grain, but just multiple enterprises, and a lot of the right support systems. The infrastructure was there,
Yeah.
and because it was there for the no-till push, and then the cover crop was a logical next step. But
You have good community there. I mean, everyone
good
wants
community.
to help.
Everyone wants to help. We've definitely seen that. It's been very interesting on hosting field days, hosting events. Our field day this summer being June 6th, the big soil health event that we hosted with Soil Regen. Very unique that a lot of our attendees are local.
Yeah.
A lot of events get
That's
put on and the local crowd doesn't necessarily show up.
that's
Very
unheard of.
interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. We have really good local support. They've been great customers and stuff, great friends. That's why I've been able to learn this stuff. Yeah, we're pushing, we're doing this on our farm, but I'm 27 years old. Like, I got to learn these things from other people. And that's why I'm trying to associate with the right folks and trying to learn and trying to help, everyone else, because I got energy and I'm not afraid to drive all over the place and spend all the money building all these things and building companies and just crazy enough to be able to, try to figure out how to make this work. But yeah, I mean, at that point though, in 2017, we knew, hey, there's this cover crop thing is going to continue to really take off and rise in short supply this year, and it's expensive. This is going to be an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
And like we were saying before, like, shoot, if we try to keep scaling and mandating this stuff, like, the rye prices are going to keep going up. So we better figure out how to grow our own, because we're going to keep doing this. And at that point, it was there wasn't the rye, and I'm buddies with the local cover crop seed dealer, and I was like, well, hey, Trent, like, why don't we'll use the winter wheat, no big deal, it's about the same price, gonna do about the same stuff, and we'll help you out, save your rye, you can sell that to your other customers, and we'll just use wheat, no big deal. And then we're like, well, we better figure out this, how we're going to grow our own. So we relayed it. The issue with the relay is the wheat is so much shorter that the
Yep.
beans were getting up into it, and we weren't able
Yep.
to harvest all the wheat because we're in 7.5-inch spacings. We're not in rows. We're not using pushers. We're cutting the whole thing. So you got to keep your cutter bar high. So
Yeah.
we left a lot of wheat in the field that we didn't have, which is fine. It just regrew, and shoot, we had like 3 or 4 years of volunteer wheat. There's probably still wheat growing out there now. So it's fine. Like, shoot, that's fine. It's just reseeding the cover crop. But, we don't want to clip those soybeans when we're trying to relay crop. And
Right.
the rye gives us a lot more of a wiggle room to be able to play with. And
Yep.
especially with some of our hills, if you're on flat ground, it's fine. You can control the head. and be able to really maybe fine tune it. But on some of our hills and contours, it's just tough to be able to
Right.
get that to work.
Well, and I'm kind of chuckling with you there about your wheat scenario. And going back to Mark's question, that's why we've got wheat, peas, and beans together because the wheat or the beans outgrew the wheat, and we
Yeah.
couldn't harvest the wheat. So I just said, fine, we'll just wait till maturity and we'll harvest them all together.
Do it all.
So
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how that'd work on our soybeans and stuff though.
yeah, I don't know.
Maybe I'd be kind of
The
waiting.
Yeah, and you're going to lose some wheat along the way. It's going to fall out of the head and it's going to be on the ground. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not the perfect scenario,
Yeah.
but sometimes, I realize they're both cereals, but sometimes we got to introduce different species
Yeah.
to the system, Um, y-
And
you know,
like we're
every year
getting
is
like if some of
different.
it falls down, it's volunteer. That's fine. It's just more cover
That's
crop, just more
okay.
diversity. Yeah.
That's okay. I mean, Mitchell, every year is different, but our best beans in 21 were beans that were planted into wheat that I was going to roll, and the beans got too tall, and we didn't do anything. So the
Yeah.
beans, the wheat grew together,
Yeah.
and we harvested 22 bushel wheat or 25 bushel wheat and 70 bushel beans, organic.
Yeah. 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 That's awesome. I mean,
So,
that's the key. I mean, and we've had some of that too, where we've just left it, not relayed it, not sprayed it, just
yeah,
exactly like you're saying. And usually for us, we've got the combine set, so we're blowing the rye out the back,
yeah, right.
blowing the volunteer out, trying to not get too much in there because we aren't separating it out. And we don't want to get docked and stuff. Most of our stuff's going to feed pigs anyway. We should tell them, hey, our beans are going to be even better because we got rye and stuff in it too.
Yeah.
And rye and rapeseed and hairy vetch and all this other stuff that we got in there too. But I don't know. I think there could be some opportunity for more of that. I mean, I think that's going to be it's an interesting kind of little rabbit hole here, but especially if it's going to livestock, it's like, shoot, why not have some of that diversity already in there for their feed? Maybe you could cut back on some of your other additives that you got to buy, especially a lot of them being bought from China. A lot of these
See,
different mineral additives and stuff. Like, why don't we figure out how to grow more of that right here?
yeah, that's exactly right. I think some of those nutritionists are coming around to this notion. We just have to
Yeah.
stay on them,
It's just
especially,
not as consistent. They're used to
yeah,
consistency, and you got some of this one, they get some of that one, and they can control it. But
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
And
It'll
I got a
come.
question here from Hayden Guterman. How you doing, Hayden? Rick, is the grain quality of the wheat poor when harvesting with soybeans? Well, yeah. Yeah, it's probably not going to be milling grade there, Hayden, but I have the luxury of having livestock in the backyard, and I was able to contact that feedlot or that dairy, and they were willing to take those as a commingled crop. So yeah, everything was fine. But yes, the quality we probably lost 3 pounds of test weight. But as far as like uh, aflatoxin or scab, I didn't see any of that. I mean, the wheat itself was still fine. We just lost some test weight. Good
Hmm.
question. Rotary screen takes rye out of beans quickly. You're exactly right, Mark. You can do that too. You got one of those old. Hell, we've still got a rotary screen that Dad bought in the '70s. So yeah, you get
That's it.
creative.
Dad was talking with Lauren. We were with Lauren Steinlage and these guys yesterday, and they were talking about cleaning rye and keeping stuff. And what Dad does is he runs it back through the combine. So he opens up the side and puts it in
Yeah,
behind the rotor and just runs it through the sieves again. And he's got to kind of finagle it, to get it like kind of piped in there, coming off of the seed tender. Put it back in there, and but it works. And shoot, that grain, like just get the sieves kind of dialed in the way that you need, and shoot, that's
yeah,
going to clean it just as good as anything else. It's basically the
yeah,
same thing, and
yeah.
good enough for what we need. And we're just running it right back in the drill anyway. All it is get some of the big seed heads out and maybe some of the
Right,
straw, and that's it. Yeah, that's all we care about.
right. Yeah, it's all good. All right, Mitchell. A couple more things I want to hit on. Mitchell, you are a dad. Tell us about being a dad.
Yeah,
What's this
yeah,
done to your life?
yeah, yeah. Good pivot here, Rick. Um, Yeah, so Celeste was born in November, so she's eighth generation here.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
eighth generation.
uh, eighth generation of the Hora farm, and she's 4 months. She just cut a tooth yesterday.
Ooh,
Four and a
wow,
half months old.
that's early.
My wife was like, "Yeah, they're supposed to get them at like 6. No, she's got a tooth already. She's been eating like food for a while. Growing. She's like just damn near 17 pounds. She's a nice chunky one, but she's happy and yeah, she's down. My wife owns a dance studio, and so they're down in Fairfield now. They ought to be coming back here in a little bit. But we'll get some dinner put together for the girls here
But
later. But no, she's been a lot of fun and been really fun for like my family and stuff too. I've got a nephew that's just about to turn 1. So Celeste is grandkid number 2 for my family, grandkid number 1 on my wife's side of the family. We got a lot of family around here, and so a lot of helping hands, a lot of people to watch over her while we're running all over the place and doing our thing. And luckily, she sleeps through the night and has for a long time,
oh
and
boy,
which is great because as we run around, we don't get a lot of sleep as it is anyway. So luckily, we've got a really good baby that allows us to sleep. So
that's great. But
she's been fun.
doesn't it change your outlook on like the urgency of things, your outlook on
Yeah,
life? I mean, it all's changed now. I mean, you're young, you're only 27,
yeah.
but that little precious cargo now that you have Celeste has changed everything.
Yeah, and it is definitely a good reminder to think about this differently, to
Yeah.
think about that long term, think about the future, but it's kind of a mixture of both, obviously I am not afraid to work super long hours and be out running all over the place and shoot a good chunk the rest of the month. I'm not going to be around here. I'm not going to be able to be with her. And it's part of it. But doing it
Yeah.
now, setting things up so that, when she's older and stuff later, when there's more going on, hopefully can be around and be able to
Right.
balance that. And
Right.
I think that's what this is all about. It's just like, it's just creating balance in the soil. That's my definition of soil health, and create balance in what we eat, balance in our life, balance in all this stuff. It's the whole thing. It's mimicking
Yeah.
nature. Mother Nature's always trying to get to balance. Same thing for everything here,
Right.
and also, trying to factor in like we're all human here, and we're all just trying to do the best we can with the couple hours that we've got, and you can only do so much here too, and it's got to
Right.
sacrifices that got to be made, things that have happened already, and more that will, both on sacrificing business opportunities and sacrificing opportunities to be with family stuff too. It's a balance of both, and got to just factor that in. But it's been a good learning experience here already, and definitely changes things. But she's been a heck of a lot of fun. So
Well,
it's all been
well,
good changes.
congratulations.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Now, Mitchell, you're such a young man you've already got a lot of accolades, but let's talk about this Forbes 30 under 30. That's a big deal. Tell us about the process. Tell us what's it mean to you and and the future, everything.
Yeah. So really, part of trying to really be out there and be upfront and trying to be as out there and as provide as much awareness as I can, has positioned me to be able to receive some pretty cool things and
Yeah.
some real humbling experiences. So yeah, so was on last year's Forbes 30 under 30 list, in the social impact category. 30 under
Okay.
30, it's not just 30 people. They give these out to lots of people, but I mean, it is a cool thing, but there's a heck of a lot more than 30 people. But in this category, it was looking at folks that are making that impact. And what was really interesting is there's lots of different categories, but they slotted me for the social impact one, which is really interesting as our space within ag and within soil health and the ag tech side of things that we're in, that this social impact was this category that the
Hmm.
committee put us into. So that's kind of interesting. But I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, I got nominated, submitted a bunch of stuff. They've got a committee, that selects the candidates and stuff. And there's been a couple different webinar kind of things. I'm in a couple different group chats, and I've chatted with plenty of the other winners, and a good, interesting little community and some good accolades. But the biggest thing for me when I get any of these different, whether it's speaking at different stuff or awards or whatever, all it is to me is that it's more people watching, more people that, all right, we better figure this out here. We better deliver. There's a lot of people that are saying, hey, somebody's got to get this figured out. Might as well be you guys. And so that's how I take it, that it's them saying, hey, there's some potential here and what you're doing is the right thing. So get after it, keep it going, and keep delivering. That's how I take it. It's very much so not we've done anything great or I'm any better than anybody else. It's no, there's some opportunity here. We need to go deliver. That's been the key for me.
Well, that's awesome, and Mitchell, thank you so much for being on. I think we're going to wrap it up here, but I want to ask. I want you to take us home here. What questions did I not ask you? What would you like to? Your last few thoughts here. How do you want to wrap this up?
I mean, it's basically my take on all this. And my kind of final is, we're very much in the right path, and you kind of hit on it before that. There's very few people that are really in and really have the understanding that everyone that's watching this or listening here later, we need to be paying attention here. We need to be learning about these things. This is where the puck is going, and figuring out some of that data, getting your ducks in a row now. You don't have to jump into anything. You don't have to lock yourself into anything, but the data, the accumulation of this stuff is going to be extremely important. That future is here now. It's going to be very much blockchain and that data driven. I already bought some carbon offsets as an NFT about 2 months ago almost.
Okay.
On the blockchain, carbon offsets, buying them with cryptocurrency. It's a thing already.
Yeah.
And it's legit. And like the guy who developed it is in France. I talked to the CEO of the dude that developed the whole thing. Like, this is some crazy stuff. But in order to position ourselves, you got to have data, and you have to tell that story. We're gonna have to have our ducks in a row. And the quicker you can get on some of that, or just be thinking about this and gathering the right things, the better positioned you're going to be able to capture the opportunities. Right. So that's kind of my last thought there. We've been trying to enable plenty of that, and but it's about learning. It's about being aware, and paying attention to events and stuff like this, and but a lot of opportunity for us, Rick, and for everyone that's on this call to make sure that you are paying attention, and because you're here, I know that you are, but it does take more of this stuff. And we also have to continue to bring more outside folks to this table too. Mm-hmm. We need to be thinking about who's not here today. Yeah. Who should be coming? Who should be coming to the field days? Who needs to be coming to the different events? Who needs to be tuning into webinars? Who else should we invite on and push on them? Some things we think a lot about. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, Mitchell, thank you so much. It's been an honor to have you on here tonight. Thank you.
I knew it would be fun. It's been it's gone fast. It is 8
it's
o'clock.
It's an hour and a half, and it felt like 20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like more content of you and me on both the Fieldwork podcast and the Topsail podcast. Yeah. We're gonna be hanging out again next week.
Yeah, so, it's gonna be a blast.
People want more of us. They can get more of us.
Next week we will be at Dave Brandt's Field Day, and we're going to do a conglomeration of Mitchell's podcasts and our podcast, and we're going to wrap them together. So next week's going to be pretty fun. Dave will be there. I know Mitchell's there. I'm there. Lauren Steinlogge's going to be. I'm not sure who else showing up.
Archuleta's going to be there.
Oh yeah, Ray's going to be there. It's going to be a blast. So do not want to miss next week.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
So thanks everybody. Everybody have a great week. Mitchell, thank you again. See you in a few days. Everyone have a great week. See you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Bye.